and we're starting at number 57. Number 57. So we'll give an introduction before we start. Okay. Kosher meat. And I think the introduction is going to be a lot longer than what we learn. But that's okay. Kosher meat. So, of course, we only have certain animals that we can eat that are kosher. So those that chew their cud and have split hooves. When I was a little boy, my mother used to say I chewed my cud and had split feet. But, you know, that's what happened. So kosher animals. So giraffe is kosher. Right? Chews its cud, has split hooves. I will point out there's a misconception that goes around that people think the reason we don't eat giraffe is because we don't know where to shecht it. That's actually not true. Giraffe have the same amount of vertebrae in their neck as every other animal. They're just bigger. So we just shecht in the exact same place. I would say the real reason we don't eat giraffe too often, because I don't know what a giraffe costs, but I'm sure they're not cheap. And once you process it, I would imagine a steak might come out to, you know, like $10,000 or something. Wow. And that's, most people don't go for $10,000 steaks.
But you need a tall shoichet for it.
Yeah, or one that stands on a ladder. Still, right. That's anyway. So we have the kosher animal. So the animal has to be kosher. Then, of course, it has to be shechted. Right? It's a slaughtered in a special place with it in the neck. Well, first the knife is incredibly sharp, so it's like getting a paper cut. You know, sometimes you get a paper cut and you don't feel it till afterwards because it was so thin. So because it's so sharp, the cut isn't felt. Not that I've ever been shechted before, thank God. So I'm not speaking from experience. But if done properly, it's not meant to be felt. And in the one movement, you cut off the blood and oxygen supply to the brain. So even though it doesn't die instantly, it pretty much blanks out pretty much instantly. That's shchita. But that's not what we're speaking about. We're speaking about the next step. The next step is we cannot consume blood. So there's different types of blood. There's blood that comes out when they shecht it, when they slaughter the animal. So like sort of, I hope no one's eating lunch. I don't want to put anyone off, but it spurts out, you know, with the heartbeat. In Sydney, they used to have tours of the kosher abattoir. And when they gave the demonstration, the shochet would always stand people exactly where, when it spurts out, would go all over them. That was his small attempt at humor. I think he found it humorous, but none of the people in the tour ever did. But anyway, there's the blood that comes out. So we can't consume that blood. Then there's the blood that drips out afterwards from the wound. So it's not what's spurting out, but it drips out afterwards. And then the third lot of blood that we can't have is the blood that's just, it's called dam averim, the blood of the limbs. It's not really absorbed in the meat per se, but it's in all the little capillaries and small little veins and spread throughout the animal. So the blood that comes out the shchita, obviously we don't have to remove, it's already come out. The blood that drips out, also they, after the shchita, a few minutes later, they open the incision more and that comes out. But the blood that's in all the limbs, this is what we salt. It's what we salt to take out. So they trade with the animal, the nikah, so they cut out various veins and sinews. excuse me, then comes the actual salting process. So first the meat has to be soaked. Well, rinsed, then soaked. So we rinse it because often there's bits of blood or dirt or different things that are just on the outside of the piece of meat. So we need to get rid of that. But then we need to salt the meat by soaking it, sorry. We need to soak the meat, and the soaking softens it up a little bit. So we need to soak it before we put the salt on. Then we cover all the surfaces in salt. Not that long ago, everyone used to do this at home, at least with chickens. Everyone bought their live chicken, took it to the shaycha, checked it themselves. They feathered it themselves. Not that long ago. But anyway, you cover all the surfaces in salt, you leave it for a period of time, and it draws out the blood. And then, of course, we have to wash away the salt very well, so we don't have this blood-soaked salt. So we wash it and rinse it after the salting as well. While it's being salted, it has to be on a place, normally have like some type of grate or on a slope, so the blood that comes out can wash away, so it doesn't soak in the blood. And that's what they do. Now, this soaking that it needs to have. Can anyone still hear me? Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's good. So the soaking that it needs to have has to be within the 72 hours. Right after that, if you don't soak it, if you don't salt it, soak it and salt it within 72 hours, then the blood won't come out, at least via salting. So then what you have to do is you have to broil it. You have to actually put it over fire. Right, that's another way to take out the blood. So they do a light salting, but they put, when it's over an actual fire, like say on a spit, the flame, the heat actually draws out the blood and it drips into the fire. So that's what happens. Now things like liver that are so, there's so much blood in it, we can't salt it. We can only broil it. That's why liver is always broiled. But other things, most other things, regular meat, we salt. Okay. So with that introduction, we can do the halacha, number 57. Basa shaloi nimlach. You have meat that hasn't been salted, because remember, not so long ago, everyone salted the meat themselves. Today, if the butcher sold you unsalted meat, they lose their kosher license. It's expected that everything happens, but everyone used to salt their own meat. So it's not salted. V'chal yom shlishi shloi b'Shabbos, and the third day is Shabbos. You can't salt it on Shabbos. You've got this meat here. What are you going to do? Now, she'im lo yedichu yehei nesa. If you don't soak it, this meat is now going to become also. It's going to become forbidden to eat. You're not going to be able to salt it afterwards anyway. So what can you do? You're allowed to have a non-Jew soak it for you. But a Jew can't do it. Right? So, we're not able to catch them in ourselves. This is for several reasons. It's salting is on flesh is if the skin is part of the tanning process, it can be like completing something, because till now it wasn't able to be eaten. Salting can be like pickling, which is a part of an offshoot of the cooking process. So a variety of reasons why we can't salt the meat ourselves. But all that it shouldn't spoil, we can ask a non-Jew to salt the meat for us. Now, most people, as we said, aren't going to have unsalted meat at home. Nevertheless, we've gotten onto the meat, so I will just mention a few things about it. One point that I want to mention, I'm sure many people have heard the expression glut kosher, and it's sort of become a term for like top quality kosher. That's not actually what it means, technically at least. So glut kosher, so an animal that, today we call anything that's not kosher, we just sort of nicknamed it treif. But treif actually technically means, or the first technical thing that it means, is that if an animal was attacked, let's say you had a sheep, and a wolf came and, and clawed it, and now it's not going to live. So treif actually means torn. Other things that
what? I didn't get it.
Sorry?
Treif means
Torn. So the animal was torn.
Oh, paw.
Yeah, so so an animal, a wolf or a bear or something came and attacked it with claws, and that's what it means.
Claw, okay.
Included in that is anything else that's not going to live. So one of the most common in Europe were certain lung diseases. I guess the climate was part of that as well, the cold winters. So an animal that is not going to live for a year on its own due to an internal or even external, but due to some type of injury or disease, it's also considered not kosher. So they would examine the lungs. Now, on the inside of the lungs, if the animal is healthy and always was healthy, then the inside is all smooth. If it had certain lung diseases, but it healed, there's like little lumps, little nodules. I didn't bring a lung to show you, so you can take my word for it. But these little lumps. Now, if it's perfectly smooth, the lungs, that's what glut means. Glut means smooth. So it means the lungs were smooth. So that's why, today, people use glut kosher to be a high standard. So you have like glut kosher pizza. So technically that would mean someone inspected the pizza's lungs and they were perfectly smooth. So obviously you can't do that. All right. Just trying to let someone in the waiting room, and it's not working. Well, we'll keep talking while we're trying.
They should shut off and then start again.
And the mouse is locked.
Oh.
Don't know what I did. New computer.
Oh.
Now it's not letting me move it.
Your mouse is working?
No.
Has a new battery per se, per chance?
No, it's in the keyboard mouse, but it's got an orange light on the keyboard.
Okay.
I think I've locked it.
Hit escape and see if that works.
Yeah, good idea.
It didn't work. Okay. All right. I'll just keep playing with it while we're talking. Anyway.
So you're saying that if it says glut kosher and it's not meat, it's irrelevant? It's just mislabeled to be glut kosher?
Yeah, now the reason it came around that, reason that it came to be used as a higher standard of kashrus was there was a time in America where all the abattoirs and everything were run by the unions, which really meant the mafia. And many other people who were shechting were not qualified and or not religious. And there wasn't really, you couldn't say that it wasn't kosher without having ramifications from the union/mafia. So what they started to do was they made a new level of kashrus, glut kosher. So they never said that other things weren't kosher, but you had to have a certain standard of someone for it to be glut kosher. So that's what happened. Yes.
Okay, a question. A supermarket that I go to, it has on the chest in the bakery, it's got 5 or 6 different hechshers, testifying that it's kosher. So what does that mean? I mean, different groupings within Judaism will have their own mishgiachs or whatever to be able to say that it's to their standard and not everybody else's, or that's the good housekeeping seal of approval for that particular group.
So it could be a few things. So in a supermarket, it could be that they have products from a few different places.
Okay.
So that it could be that. What some people do is they'll have a hechsher that's known as incredibly high standard in their area, and that works for their area. And then they'll also perhaps get an OU or an OK or something that is
the universal
recognized,
seal of approval, right?
Yeah, wider afield.
Right.
So in the local area, the other hechsher is considered superior, but outside of the area, people might not know it.
Okay. Now, does Lubavitch have its own hechsher or Chabad or anything like that?
We'll
Yes.
say yes and no. Is that a good answer?
Okay.
So
maybe.
you have
Maybe. Okay, I got it.
the Crown Heights based in, right, CHK.
Yeah.
They have a hechsher, and that is, so that's, it's well known, and sometimes people prefer to use a hechsher and it's politics. Sometimes people prefer a certain hechsher because they know the people involved personally, when sometimes that's the reason they do use it or don't use it, depending on what they know about the people involved.
Right.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Yes, this is Moshe. I wanted to address Robert. There's a listing on the CRC of all the hechshers of all basar and all products, if I'm not mistaken. He could download that information if he's
good.
interested.
All right. Thank you,
Give all
Moshe.
the Beit Yosef, I believe, amongst the Sfaradim, is one of the higher quality meats amongst the Sfaradim, which is a little bit, which is different from the lot.
Yeah, just comment on that. Beit Yosef is not a hechsher. Beit Yosef
But not a
means,
hectare, but I mean but I'm just saying
what
it's-
it means is that
it's,
when they
the meat-
took out certain veins, they followed the stringency of the Beit Yosef, who was the
stringency. That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you can have several people. You could have several different hechshers that all go according to Beit Yosef. So I hate this during the shear, but if anyone can help, any suggestions of this mouse, I've got 2 people in the waiting room now. And it's just frozen.
Thank you.
I think I pressed something on the mouse board on the keyboard, and it
It's locked.
yeah, and I don't see anything to unlock it.
Rabbi, you might have to restart your laptop or your computer and just take us all off for a minute, and then your default settings will go back to where it was for the mouse.
We hope, right?
Yeah, well, I'm
Right.
afraid then the mouse will not work. I won't get anyone on. And I'm also afraid I'm not even sure I can go to the restart without moving the mouse.
Well, you can restart, Rabbi, by holding the on-off switch for 10 seconds or more. It'll shut down your computer, and then you can do that. But I have a question for you. Do you have one of those little pad? Is it a laptop that you have?
Yeah, laptop.
Does it have the little square where you can actually move the
Yes,
the-
that's
the
what's not
mouse?
working.
Okay. Take a look at that little pad. Is there a light on
Yes,
in your
there's
upper
a
left?
yellow light.
Okay. See if you can press that light down and see if that unlocks the mouse.
No, that doesn't do anything. I've tried that.
Okay.
Try pressing next to it.
Because that's an indication that the mouse is locked. But I forgot exactly how you can actually unlock it, to be honest.
Hmm.
Okay. Oh, well, they're joining. I don't know what happened. Okay.
You press the light that, that we
The
told
light's
you.
still on, but something happened. Welcome to those that just joined. I apologize for keeping you waiting. So,
Does your mouse, Rabbi, does your mouse work now?
no, it's still not working, but there's a little round thing in the middle of the keyboard. So I got it to the area, and I'm not sure what I pressed once I got there to make it work, but everyone's on, so Baruch Hashem. Okay, so that is the meat, the process of meat. Next question. The frozen meat, right? What happens? So we said we need to soak the meat within 3 days, within 72 hours. Otherwise, the meat hardens a little bit, and you can't kosher it anymore. So the question is, what if the meat was frozen within the 3 days? Does that help? So in a nutshell, we're going to say not really, at least ideally, but it was soaked, then frozen for 70, longer than 72 hours. If you didn't have any other meat, you could probably use that one. But ideally, that doesn't help us either. So it wouldn't help if you got stuck with unsalted meat, just before Shabbos, throw it in the freezer. That's the situation there. Yeah, so I'm not sure we finished off about the glycosis. As we said, technically it means that the lungs were smooth, but as today it's just become, I've seen glycosis ice cream.
Right.
Glycosis whiskey, I understand that was smooth. But
Good.
that's how it goes. And also just wanted to comment, it was Moshe about the CRC, the listing, because not every hechsher is what it claims to be. Again, without criticizing anyone, there are two things we want from a good hechsher. One is high standards, and two is that it's uniformity. In other words, everyone actually meets those standards. Right? So the OU is an excellent example of uniformity. All the mashgichim have the same training. If there's a restaurant under the OU, they all check lettuce the same way. Now, some people will perhaps complain that some of the standards in certain areas may not be as high as they could. So, but whatever the standard is kept perfectly. Now, then you have some hechsherim, which on paper have the highest standards, but when it comes to practice, those standards aren't always carried out. And sometimes that is reputation, and sometimes that's reality. So that's going to be another reason why you have products with multiple hechsherim. So, if you take, let's say, Empire Chicken, for example, I think they have 3 hechsherim, right? And it's the OU is for the broad recognition, and the other one is for one of the other ones is for the high standards, and so that's why they do that. Yes.
So listen, sometimes I go and I see sparkling water that has an OU on it. Now, that's what's the politics of that? Water is water, correct?
Well, again, yes and no. I'll tell you what I mean. So although we're going off the topic, but I think it's good to discuss.
Okay.
Not Shabbos, but it's good things to discuss. In that, first of all, there's a lot of things. What else is bottled in the same plant? So when it has a hechsher, means they've gone and checked it out.
Okay.
Now, it may have been perfectly fine without checking it out, but sometimes, let's say, for example, I use Kahlua as an example. So the Kahlua that comes from Mexico, was bottled in Mexico, is kosher. The one that is bottled in America is not. Now, it's the exact same recipe, or perhaps it's dairy or something. Maybe it is technically kosher. That's because of other things that are used on the same machinery.
Okay.
So what's used on the same machinery can be an issue. So they've checked that out. That could be one potential thing. And not so much for drinks, but I'll just give an example. A friend of mine once was asked to give a hechsher to a candy for Pesach. And, first they sent him the ingredients, and the ingredients were all kosher for Pesach, for Passover. And then you go to the factory and check it out. And he's watching the process. And it was a chocolate-coated center. So the center came out of a little tube, it dropped onto the conveyor belt. And then it was hot at this stage. And then it got sprayed with a white powder. And then it got dipped in chocolate. And he asked them, what's the white powder? And they said, it's flour. Now you've got this hot goo with being sprinkled with flour. This is instant chametz. So he says to them, the flour wasn't one of the ingredients. So they said it's not an ingredient. It's just to help it hold its shape to the chocolate's on. So they weren't trying to be deceitful. In their mind, there was not even an ingredient. So when it comes to commercial kashrus in general, and there are certain things, if it's under a certain percentage, it doesn't have to be listed. And even though that may not make an issue for other things, depending on what it is or what percentage, that can potentially make an issue for kashrus. I gave the hechsher to a bakery in Australia at one stage, and they wanted to use a chocolate. They were, a vegan bakery. So it was, sourdough, and we were able to, was the only kosher bread in the whole city where we were. And they found the chocolate, they showed it to me, a dark chocolate, said vegan, everything, but it was OUD.
OU dairy. So.
Yeah. So there was not dairy mentioned on the ingredients. I told him unfortunately couldn't use it. It was dairy. He says, well, how come? So look, I never saw the factory. I wasn't there. I can't tell you. But the people who did inspect it have certified it that way. In general, though, with chocolate, if you have more than one chocolate made on the same machinery, they can never clean it properly.
If you call OU, they will tell you
Yes.
that when it's dairy equipment, they mark it dairy.
Yes.
But that you shouldn't be eating it, the Oreo with the meal, but you can have.
Yeah, that might go with Oreo, but something like the chocolate that's thick, you can never clean those machines properly. So something like a chocolate that's made on dairy with equipment that other things are made on, there's the other batches, at least the first run or two, and they keep going back and forwards between this one and that one. It is dairy. That was, but I couldn't say that was the reason for that particular product without ever inspecting the factory.
I would only say call the OU. They'll tell you. If
Yes.
they know it's dairy equipment, they will tell you that you can eat it.
This was in Australia almost 25 years ago, though. So I'm not going to call them now, but that is true. If you do have a question, they actually have very good customer service, and by email or telephone, so they're very helpful. So that was with the meat. So spring water, any product today, things aren't what they used to be. Bread, for example, unless they're making it specifically to be kosher, almost no bread is kosher. 50 years ago, 60 years ago, whatever it was, bread was bread. But today, they're always using animal products or animal-derived products for shortening, for greasing pans, all kinds of things.
Milk in the bread. Milk in the bread itself.
Yeah, you can have milk, but even one without milk, it most likely has, all the supermarket bread. They've used an oil to, to sort of grease the pans, and it's an animal vegetable oil blend. That's how it goes. So, and it won't be on the ingredient because it's not an ingredient. It's just to grease the pan. You can never know what's in what. So I'll never complain, even if there's water or various things that have a hechsher. So you never know. Okay, number 58. Unless there's any more questions.
Are we going to be dealing with? I guess the question would be also for wine and for kosher Pesach wine. I mean, there are certain prohibitions of who can make it or who cannot make kosher wine, right? Isn't there something in the law relative to that?
Yes. So wine, we can't have a non-Jew touch the wine. They can work in the process, but they can't actually come into physical contact with the wine.
And that's all wine.
Sorry?
All kosher wine.
All kosher wine, correct.
Okay.
Now, the reason for this, there's two reasons. Originally, non-Jewish people, I want to say originally, I'm saying maybe even to quite recently, but they used to quite often, when they came across wine, offer it to their various deities with a lowercase d, right? So that's called yain nesach. That means wine that's been offered. So that is, if we know it's been, a libation that's been offered, then there's nothing you can do about it. Not only you can't drink it, you can't have any benefit from it. Nothing you can do with it. Then there's what they call stam yain. It's just wine. We don't know if anyone offered it. It was made for selling, so there's a good chance no one did offer it. It's just whatever it is. But we have there's two concerns. Number one is that perhaps it was offered. But the second concern was the decree made in the times of the ancient Greek occupation of Israel. In the lead up to Hanukkah, one of the problems, particularly in the upper class, there was a lot of intermarriage. And the intermarriage essentially came from, started off from people hanging out and drinking together. And so there was a prohibition made against non-Jewish wine to try and make a separation to stop that intermarriage. And that's still in place today. And so it's those two concerns together why we don't drink regular wine, only wine that was made particularly to be kosher. Now, there's not really any chametz in the wine making process generally. So all wine, unless it's flavored with something, but all wine could be kosher Pesach. So usually what they do in the kosher wine is that they're checking to make sure there's no chametz around the area as well. The workers aren't having a sandwich while they're checking certain things, and and then nearly all the kosher wine is certified kosher Pesach as well. Okay. All right. Number 58. Also the Mareach Retia.
Rabbi?
Yes.
I'm sorry. That's type of a scam call intervened, and I didn't hear the very beginning with the types of wine that we're not allowed to have that are. I heard about that they wanted to prohibit mixing with the goyim socially,
Yes.
which the wine was causing. But what was the one before that, or two before that?
If it was offered as a libation, as a offering to their gods.
Deities.
Yeah, that was quite common. Look, even in many churches and today, various things, wine is part of it. I don't know if there's any groups that go around and offer up wine
Passing
whenever they
out
see it.
passing out they're saying this is the blood of their Yoshki or
No,
whatever.
it's communion with the wafer and the wine.
Yeah.
So,
But
The
they
host.
wouldn't for us, would they? I don't
so
know.
the what definitely was extremely common at a certain time, in Roman times, that if a person just saw wine, he would like give it a little shake and offer it up to his god. So that's why now wine that has been boiled, it's been cooked, is not a problem because you don't offer up that kind of wine. So we consider pasteurized wine, even though it's not actually boiled. It's normally a little bit lower temperature than that, but we consider that cooked wine. So it's called mavushal. So most of the kosher wines, except for the very expensive ones, generally are mavushal. The more fancier ones, so it affects the taste somewhat, and therefore, some of the more expensive ones, it's not mavushal. So when you have one that hasn't been cooked, you have to be careful that once it's been opened, once it no longer has two seals, that non-Jews don't come in physical contact with it. And if they do, well, then we can't drink it anymore. Yes.
I wanted to tell you a story. I went on a cruise in which it turned out that there were a lot of Jews that were there, and they had, of course, Erev Shabbat services, etc. And the cruise did everything that it could in order to make us happy, because they also had a bottle of wine. And of course, in their way, in their attempt to try and make things easy for us, one of their workers actually opened the bottle of wine, which was, we thought it was a very nice thing until we looked at the bottle, and the bottle did not say mevushal. So we went back, we told them, they did that a second time. And the third time we had to basically tell them, just bring the bottle and leave it corked. We'll take care of the uncorking, because no matter what you tried to tell them, it sort of didn't make any sense to them. So therefore, it was problematic. So anyway, and it was a nice, very beautiful, very good wine, very kosher wine.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yes, Anton.
Yes. I'm talking about the whole system and getting back to the meats. I think everybody agrees that it's much more expensive. Glatt kosher, or properly kosher meats is much more expensive to the consumer than non-kosher meats, or meats that are supposedly kosher, but are not.
Yeah.
Isn't that unfair, say, to a young couple who wants to do it right, and properly eat the proper meats that are commanded, and they can't afford it? And there must be many young couples and young families that have a problem with that. What's wrong with this system?
So first, before we say what's wrong, because it is slaughtered by hand, it's then soaked and salted.
I understand there are a lot of people.
So there are extra legitimate expenses. So therefore, it's going to be more expensive. Now, obviously, though, that's within limits. That's not. There's a difference between charging for extra expenses, still making a profit, and price gouging. Right. So if it's extra expensive, I think it's just one of those things. Price gouging, of course, is a problem. In the bigger cities, you don't have it so much because there's competition. Now, out of town, it can be more problematic, and there definitely are people, unfortunately, places where people have taken advantage. So it can be problematic. I think when it comes also that when you say that people can't afford, again, obviously there are certain individuals in society who actually have nothing, unfortunately. Majority of people today, though, and I'm not taking away from those who don't, majority of people today, you look at the standard of living that we live today compared to, grandparents. We live such a high standard of living. Perhaps someone can't afford to have steak every night, but I think most people can afford kosher meat. Ironically, I would say where people can least afford meat, kosher meat, is in Israel. That's actually, at least with American money, the cheapest. Just because people have your average person has to work average families work 2.5 jobs. They have a much lower standard of living than your average American. So I think in most places, as long as it's not price gouging, yes, it's a little more expensive, but I think it's reasonable. I don't think it's an unfair ask. If there is a place where they are price gouging, I know of a place where, again, I'm not going to say any names. It's been taken care of, but they bought for Pesach these massive bags of sugar that had an OUP on it, Pesach, and he repackaged it and as Pesach sugar and sold it for like 10 times the price in little bags. It was just unfortunately individual. There will be the individual things from time to time, but I think as a whole, generally, I mean, I don't know where you live, but I think in most places it's not too bad. I see you shaking your head. You don't agree.
I'm listening. Okay.
And the bigger the city, or the bigger, let's say something like an Empire Chicken, it's not necessarily the bigger the city because it's sort of everywhere. In other words, the more they produce, the cheaper it's going to be. Just because the systems are in place. That's also sometimes when it comes to some of the smaller hefsherim, they're only doing small amounts, and that therefore also brings up the costs. They've got all the facilities and only producing a small amount. Okay. So number 58. We can't spread plaster, shaiva or zofis, or wax or tar. So, whether it's on a wall or something, this is part of building. Also, shaiva or shemen of the. So you also can't put wax or like an animal fat, oil into a hole to close it, to seal it. Ladamkoi al the simon, or to stick something on as a marker. So we can't do any of those things. However, you can spread food. So peanut butter. So anyone who's worried they can't have peanut butter on Shabbos, you're safe. So like butter on bread, for example, right? So it's not anything to do with the building, and then that's all worked.
So what are you not allowed to?
So let's say putting plaster on a wall or a piece of wood or.
Well, that's work. It's not food.
Correct. So food is no problem. Anything that's not a food is a problem. So I was also mentioning the same, for example, nowadays, some like plasticine that the kids have. They play with the Play-Dohs and these kinds of things. Comes the same issue, smoothing out these cracks, or they have these little art kits, and you make something with a mold, either out of copper or something, and you pour in plaster, to hold the shape. So those things are a problem as well. Smoothing out glues, all these kinds of things. So that's what we can't do. Any questions on that one?
So food you're allowed to spread any of it?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
You said that Play-Doh is a problem, like you
Yes.
shouldn't give kids Play-Doh to play
No,
with.
not on Shabbos. During the week is fine though. But you know, if you have carpets, keep the Play-Doh away from the kids as well, even during the week. That's experience of 11 kids, Baruch Hashem. Number one. 59. You can't break or cut anything that's not food. Right, so anything that's not a food item, you can't cut or break. Avo, however, marshal machol, once it's food, afilo rakla behema, even only animal food. And this doesn't mean you have to have the animal, right? But it's the kind of thing that animals do eat. Mutter, then you're allowed to. So, anything that could be for a food is not a problem. And therefore, you can break a piece of straw, cut a piece of straw to use as a like a toothpick. Or little bits of fragrant wood. You can break it, and we say crush it. We don't mean to a powder, because that would be grinding, but crushing it to small pieces, little chunks, in order to get a nice smell. So you're allowed to do that. But even if these spices are as hard as wood, you can still break it. However, you can't break hardwood to be a toothpick, only the soft sort of straw. So any food item, cut it, break it, chop it, as long as it's not so finely chopped that it will be like grinding. You can do anything to food items. Non-food items, if there's a Shabbos purpose, like for the nice smell, if it's soft to be a toothpick, so those things you can break.
When you're saying food, you're including the wrapper that the food is in, also, right?
Yeah, we spoke about that before. That's something else. That's also true. But this is just talking about the food itself. But that is correct. You can break the food.
Is that because it's food specifically that the wrapper is okay?
Generally, it's because for the sake of food. And as we said, also this means animal food. So you can open cat food, the dog food, you can break it up into bits, feed your pet chickens, whatever you have. Okay, number 60. Elon, a tree, benchul dach, benchul yavish, literally whether it's green, moist or dried out. In other words, even a dead tree, not only a tree that's alive, but the laws we're going to say now apply also to dead trees. You can't use it for any purpose, the tree. The tree is muksa. The tree has no purpose on Shabbos, and so you can't use the tree. Now, we're not talking about wood that you've cut it, you planed it, and you built your house out of it. Right? It's no longer a tree. While it still has the form of a tree. Now, even though you're not shaking the tree when you use it, right? Because again, if you shake it, then you've moved something that's mukta, so that would be a problem. But even it's a big tree, big solid, established tree, and by using it, putting something on it, touching it, you're not going to move it. Still a problem. Ein oilam boy, we can't go up in the tree, so you can't climb in the tree on Shabbos. Ein islam boy, you can't hang in it, and by hanging it, we don't mean you can't hang on it. We're not hanging anyone, God forbid, but you can't hang off the tree. You can't put anything on the tree, on a branch. You coat over a branch or your hat or something, or litloy memeno, or to take anything off, or likshoy boy, or you can't tie anything to the tree. Behemoth, for an example, like an animal, creates a behemoth and the like. So we can't put anything on the tree, in the tree. We can't go in the tree. Tree can't be used at all. Now, not only the tree, but I feel a little bit study ilon. Now, literally, this means even the sides of the tree. Now, the sides of the tree does not mean the side of the trunk or something. That's considered part of the tree. When we say the side, we mean, let's say you had a hook or in the tree, or you put a beam into the tree and it's hanging out. So you can't even use this extra piece. Also, the shlomish, you can't use that. And therefore, im sal halalav, if there's a basket hanging on a tree branch, so this is an example of the sides of a tree, because it's not the actual tree itself, but something coming out of it. You got a basket hanging on a branch. Also, little azadav metoich sal or little in the sofa. You can't you can't move anything in this basket. You can't put things in, take it out. Where could you? Now the sal, how it's the ilam, because this basket is considered the side of the tree. Abel, however, im yosei to kua be'ilon valatoy sal, if you put a peg into the tree and the basket is hanging on the peg, it's not on the branch, it's hanging on a peg. Now, now you can take things in and out of the basket. Why? Because there's a havia salts sabe tzedavim. It's no longer considered a side of a tree, it's a side of a side. So again, we need to have things removed from the tree. So once removed, there's a problem. So once removed, an example is a hook in the tree or a basket hanging from a branch of a tree. But twice removed, now is no longer a problem. The twice removed, the example we just gave, is now you have a hook in the tree and the basket is hanging from the hook, not from the tree.
But the hook has to be there before Shabbat.
Correct, yes, all there before Shabbat. Or the truth is no, actually. If a non-Jew put a hook in his tree on Shabbos and hung a basket there for his own benefit, if he did it for a Jew on Shabbos, then we have a problem. But if he's done it for himself, and now there happens to be a basket, he put a basket, he put a hook, he put a basket, and then after it's all there, he put a few apples in the basket. And you wanted to come eat the apple, take an apple and eat it, you could. So it didn't have to be there before Shabbos, but generally, yes. So, Vassal, the basket itself, though. So this basket's hanging on a hook. Hook's on the tree, basket's on the hook. So it's twice removed. You're allowed to take things in and out of the basket. The basket itself, also the kaf misham l'sham. You, meaning a Jew, is not allowed to take it off the hook or put it on the hook on Shabbos, because then you're making use of the hook, which is called a side of the tree. In other words, it's only once removed.
When
So
you are turned, your head is turned. I cannot hear you.
Oh,
only when you are facing the screen.
Okay, just had my book to the side. I'll try and be more careful. Thank you for letting me know.
Yes, Rabbi, I had the same difficulty, but I guess Zion had the omens to mention it. I didn't make the connection. But yeah, it's only when we see you front on, at least me, and I guess Betsy also, that we can really hear you.
Okay. So briefly summarize what I just said, in case anyone missed anything. So we can't use a tree on Shabbos. We can't climb in a tree. We can't put things on the tree. We can't take things off the tree. The tree is muksa and we can't have benefit from the tree. A once removed from the tree, which the halacha calls the side of a tree, we also can't use. So that once removed would be like a hook, put into the tree, or a basket hanging on a tree branch. However, twice removed, or the side of a side, that we can use. So an example of a twice removed is a basket not hanging on the branch, but hanging on a hook that's hammered into the tree. So the even what it's connected to is not the tree itself. So then on Shabbos you can take things in and out of the basket. However, you can't take the basket itself on and off the hook because the hook is only once removed. And we can't use or either put things on or take things off the once removed.
Rabbi, what about a hammock?
That would be the same thing unless, well, it depends again how it's connected. So if the hammock is connected to some type of bolt or hook that's on the tree, so then it's twice removed and there's no problem to use it. If it's connected to the tree itself, to actual, let's say, tied around branches, then we're not going to be able to use it on Shabbos. Right, and although it doesn't say it here, I'll just point out to you, someone who climbs in a tree on Shabbos, he has to stay there to the end of Shabbos. Obviously, not to make a life-threatening situation, I don't know, man-eating pythons hanging out in the tree, but normal circumstances. Likewise, anything that you put on the tree on Shabbos has to stay there till after Shabbos as well. So, don't accidentally put your coat on it. Okay, any questions on that? Okay.
Think the
All right.
time,
Sorry?
Now I have.
I think the time is up. I'm not sure.
Yes.
Yeah,
We got 1 more minute.
Rabbi,
Yes.
suppose that you forget and you put your jacket on, let's say, the limb of a tree, but your jacket has your siddur in it. Can you move your jacket to get your siddur?
While leaving it on the tree, but you're just sort of reaching into the pockets.
Or
Yeah, I
even-
guess so. That would be, I
can you
guess.
take the jacket off the tree to get your siddur?
No. Now the jacket's stuck. But you
But
could
you
take
can-
the siddur out of the pocket because now that would be like the basket hanging on the hook. Now it's a second remove.
Nice remove.
So don't go on a Shabbos vacation in a treehouse.
So what do you do in a situation where you decide, the Gemara talks about, the Gemara in Eruvin talks about, if you want to move the Eruv, and it uses examples of a tree as to extend, as being the place that you put food in order to extend the Tchum of Shabbat.
So the classic cases of speaking about there is when you have branches, the canopy spreads out over a certain area and then goes within 3 tefachim. Now, a tefach is a fist size. I'm not threatening anyone, God forbid, just that's a tefach. So 3 of these from the ground. So, and then it's like a closed-in area, or you put it under the tree or on the roots of the tree. Again, the roots being within 3 tefachim of the ground. So they're considered an extension of the ground, not part of the tree. So that's there's also a case where exactly the case we had now was put in a basket hanging on the hook. So it has to be accessible. The food you use for an Eruv has to be accessible on Shabbos. So if it was a situation where it's not accessible, then you wouldn't be able to use it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, no problems. Okay, so I guess we've run out of
Rabbi?
time.
Rabbi,
Yes.
this is Penina Sarah Police. I wanted to ask, I didn't get a chance because I had a very important call that came in, but with respect to wine, it's been my understanding, I've been told that wine or the grape juice that we're going to use for Kiddush for Shabbat, for example, that an Ashkenazi has to, well, I guess the Ashkenazi can open it after, but Sfaradi cannot open it during Shabbat. I don't know. I'm thinking about either uncorking or the twist off top.
No, you can open on Shabbos. I don't believe there's a difference between Ashkenazim and Sephardim. The only potential issue is if you have to tear a seal that has words.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's.
So some of them have another seal like over the top that you, and even then, often if you use a knife, you can cut, not breaking the words, between the words, often. So that's really the only issue, is breaking a seal if it's with words on it. Otherwise, no
Would
problem
anybody
opening
else-
Shabbos.
I mean, is anybody else here cognizant of a difference between Ashkenazi and Sephardi with regard to opening the bottle on Shabbat? Or, I'm just asking that in case anybody knows any other, not Kiddush, but wrinkle perhaps in the minhagim or in the view regarding halacha.
Yeah, I don't think so, but I'd be happy to. I'll ask some smart friends of mine. Get back to you next
Okay.
week.
Thank you very, very much, Rabbi Warnick.
You're
I have
welcome.
a question.
Yes.
A tree with the beautiful, expensive food, and you put a basket under the tree in order when the food falls down, you can gain some during Shabbos. On Shabbos morning, you're allowed to cover.
No, if it comes off the tree on Shabbos, you can't eat it till after Shabbos.
No, I'm not talking about eating. I'm talking about to cover the basket during the Shabbos in order to, after Shabbos, to take the basket with the food. Are you allowed to put the
Oh,
basket?
that's for protection?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could put a cover over, yeah.
Okay. That's what I wanted to know. That's good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyway, unless there's any other questions, I'm going to have an amazing week. And we'll see you next week, God willing. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye-bye,
Shabbos.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.